Is this how we live now? 9 dead after a suspected terror attack at a shopping centre in Munich. The shooting began in the early evening. People in another major European city forced to run for their lives just a week after Nice.
People were running towards our house and they didn't know what was going on, and soon after the sirens started to blow up, and yeah, they haven't stopped ever since.
Another major test for the German security services just days after a terror attack on a train. This is Munich tonight, a city in fear, a city in lockdown. And it's not over yet as police continue to hunt for up to 3 suspected attackers. Also on News at 10 tonight. The shock of the vote, the biggest economic drop since 2009, being blamed on Brexit. And flanked by his family, cheered on by his party. But will the most important speech of Trump's career take him all the way to the White House?
This is ITV News at 10 with Nina Hussain.
Good evening. Not again. Tonight, the German city of Munich is in lockdown. Up to 9 people are believed dead and several injured. Yet again, a major European city is dealing with what appears to be a terrorist attack. It began with gunfire in a busy shopping centre. Police are hunting up to 3 suspects they believe are still out there. For the last 5 hours, people have been told to stay indoors. Munich's transport system has been shut down and motorways around the city cleared of traffic. Terrifying footage filmed by people at the scene shows shoppers running for their lives as shot after shot rang out.
The man standing outside a McDonald's restaurant has just pulled out a handgun. The bullets fly, innocent passers-by are hit, and the terror begins. Families run away from the popular Olympic shopping centre. It had been a busy Friday evening in Munich, the start of the weekend. Many hundreds of people are evacuated, guided away from the violence that was still continuing. As civilians were moved out, the security forces moved in. Armed police, the military and special forces. The scale of what they were dealing with was becoming dreadfully clear. Not just one, but as many as 3 separate attackers. This man was seen on top of the shopping mall's car park. He seems to have a pistol, and when challenged, this happens. Police moved into the car park. Hundreds of shots had been fired, and there were already reports of mass fatalities. But the gunman seemed to have slipped away, leaving destruction and death behind them. The attack on the shopping centre in the Muzak district of Munich appeared to be coordinated. Around 5 o'clock came first reports of the shooting outside McDonald's, followed by those images of another gunman on the rooftop car park. Later reports talked of a 3rd attacker. As police searched in vain for the killers, people living nearby were ordered to remain in their homes.
I could just see from the balcony that people were running towards our house, and they didn't know what was going on, and soon after the sirens started to blow up, and yeah, they haven't stopped ever since. I mean, it's terrible and everyone is following the news, but it's not as if you could just stop living your life and stop going outside.
The search area widened. The authorities closed railway stations and evacuated the underground after one report that a gunman had been seen entering the metro. Tonight, Munich police said it was still too early to identify the attackers or their cause, but they were undoubtedly terrorists. This man was still searching for his wife and youngest daughter. They'd gone to different shops just before the shooting started. Night fell, with people who'd hidden for hours inside shops finally being bussed to safety. And the police still hunting the killers, unable to confirm a report that one gunman had taken his own life as officers closed in. Paul Davis, News at 10.
Germany is now reeling from 2 terror attacks within a week. On Monday, a man armed with an axe and a knife attacked and injured passengers on a suburban train. The attacker, who was shot dead at the scene, was said to have entered Germany recently. Who these latest attackers are is not yet known, but the target tonight appears to have been a calculated one, a place and a time where hundreds of unsuspecting people would have gathered, shopping for the weekend or ready to go out. The question remains, why Germany?
They had their choice of targets, their choice of methods, but for several years, every European intelligence agency has worried about precisely these: a busy shopping centre, men with guns, a nightmare plot, the softest target. This is the most feared terrorist scenario, but it's also the most rehearsed. The Trafford Centre in Manchester last year, the sort of training exercise that usually happens behind the scenes, played out for our cameras. The one gift to Germany's security services today was that an attack like this somewhere was totally predictable. But how prepared can we be?
Seeing them in advance is incredibly difficult, and particularly if the group is small, if they don't have any connections with other people and so on, and if their attack planning is relatively short in duration before they launch the attack. So that your opportunities are cut down by that. But nonetheless, clearly if somebody is buying weapons or something, if somebody is showing signs of extreme radicalization, propensity towards violence, maybe they'll pop up on a radar.
A shopping centre in Kenya in 2013. Multiple attackers killed 67 people. In the analysis of these events, security services in countries like Germany noted that this could have been Europe, and today it was. Just this week, IS claimed its first attack in Germany, a refugee from Afghanistan. But the day it released this video, Europol issued a warning about a rise in far-right extremism too.
They know about German angst, as we used to call it. There is an element of anxiety in German society, has been for some time, but particularly since last year. And so they're exploiting it. Germany is an ideal country to exploit in terms of destabilizing the peace of mind of the citizens. And that is the classical way to do it.
But whoever did do it, whatever their motive, whichever group or individuals, the consequence is clear. Mass casualty terrorism is becoming Europe's new normal.
Yeah, exactly that. It feels relentless. 3 terror attacks in Europe in the last week alone.
And what's clear now is that this problem of terrorism is no longer an issue simply for people who live far away on different continents. This is a major problem for major countries right across Europe. The question now turns to who might be responsible, and we frankly do not know. There are IS-related social media accounts which are celebrating this attack this evening. But let's be clear, there are some people who've listened to some of the amateur video emerging and claim that one of the attackers made a pro-German statement. As I referred to there in the report, there have been warnings just this week about the rise of far-right extremism. Perhaps in response to the migration situation across Europe being of particular concern. Now, Europol, the international agency, says that they felt that some of those far-right groups wouldn't be able to amass the sort of weaponry that we saw used today. But we will see what emerges over the next few hours. And what's perhaps most worrying now, Nina, is the fact that there may be up to 3 offenders, 3 gunmen, who are still on the loose.
OK, for now, Rohit, thank you. Exactly 4 weeks since the UK's vote to leave the EU, today the first indications of its impact on the economy began to emerge, and it is not good news. A trusted report looking at the manufacturing and service sectors has shown a dramatic drop, a level not seen since the fallout from the global financial crisis. We also saw a shift from the Chancellor, Philip Hammond, while in China he said the government's tax and spending policy could be reset if we do see a downturn. But he didn't say how.
There were warnings a vote to leave would cause an economic shock, and since the referendum, the markets panicked, the pound slumped, confidence fell. And today we have some evidence which shows the economy could already be contracting, and the Chancellor says it is now time to reset government policy. The evidence comes from a business activity index, and it found the UK economy is shrinking at the fastest rate since the financial crisis. The economist who prepared it said the results were worse than he expected.
It's the service sector, by far the largest part of the economy, where we saw the real worrying trend. And that was in terms of how growth changed between June and July. That was the biggest turnaround that we've seen in the history of this survey, which is nearly 2 decades.
Dramatic, yes, but it is only a snapshot in the week since the referendum. No one can yet answer if it's a blip or something more prolonged. The FTSE 100 finished up this evening, but first thing this morning it fell sharply because in the city they think these figures are very reliable. They're based on orders, on output and on employment, and in the past this particular index has been a very accurate predictor of what is happening to GDP. But of course a weaker economy means weaker government finances, and the new Chancellor knows that. Philip Hammond was in Beijing today, but not so far away that he couldn't be told about these figures. Effectively, he will now be forced to put George Osborne's plans in the bin.
It is an opportunity to reset policy. I've made it clear that at the autumn statement we will have an opportunity, if necessary, on the basis of the data that's then available, to provide further support to the economy.
Rupert Harrison was George Osborne's Chief of Staff during the austerity years and thinks the new Chancellor will have to spend and borrow more.
If this survey is right, as it often has been in the past, it suggests we're heading into a downturn, possibly a recession. So Philip Hammond is facing a rise in the deficit, whatever happens. The big decision for him is whether he's got any wriggle room to go beyond that, spend any extra money to try and stimulate the economy a bit.
A new government might have calmed nerves, the next survey might be better, but this one was worse than most economists predicted. Chris Ship, News at 10 in the city.
So is this the first sign we are heading to a recession, or just the short, sharp shock we were warned about? Today's survey, the Purchasing Managers Index, might sound dry, but it's one many politicians and economists take notice of. Could it then be showing us Brexit means bad economic times to come?
It looks like business as usual, but cut a little deeper and the picture is less rosy. This factory makes clothes in the UK and sells predominantly in Britain. The immediate effect of Brexit has been felt.
When the referendum results first came out, there was a period of great uncertainty. For a month or so, it was very quiet around here, because the investors weren't willing to commit. They didn't know what the value of the pound would be in the future. Also, none of our employees, who are European, actually a lot of them, none of them knew what the future holds for them. Are they allowed to remain here? Can they continue working for us? So that itself created a bit of an uncertainty.
It's a story being replicated across the country. But how significantly have businesses been affected? Today's figures take into account orders and output from more than 400 companies. Any number below 50 is bad for business. Today it's 47.7. It hasn't been this low since the height of the financial crisis. In the past, this number has moved in parallel with GDP levels. It's now predicted the economy will shrink by 0.4%.
It's too early to know definitively if what we're seeing here and across the country is the beginning of a protracted downturn or a short-term slowdown due to the referendum. But what is clear is that right now, businesses are being affected.
So whose responsibility is it to patch up the economy?
It's really up to the government to provide some stimulus, to provide some guidance, and to try and reduce the uncertainty for businesses and households, as well as provide a little bit of a bigger demand for the economy to help us weather this storm.
For businesses across the UK, a seamless plan from government is now imperative. Norina Hertz, News at 10.
Donald Trump is tonight looking towards the second stage of his mission to win the presidency and totally change American politics. He's completed the conquest of his party, who roared their acclaim for his nomination speech at the Republican convention in Cleveland, Ohio. It was a long one, watched by 30 million TV viewers. 75 minutes of headline-grabbing Trump. Tough on crime, tough on terrorism, tough on putting America first, and really tough on Hillary Clinton.
Our next president, Donald J. Trump.
His daughter Ivanka made the introduction. This has already been one of the most tumultuous and successful journeys in American political history. A man who's never held office, now in a position to utter these words.
I humbly and gratefully accept your nomination for the presidency of the United States.
His was a dark portrait of a country, his opponent judged to be a mortal danger to the Republic.
This is the legacy of Hillary Clinton: death, destruction, terrorism, and weakness.
And in the aftermath of the horror of Nice, he made this promise.
We are going to defeat the barbarians of ISIS, and we're going to defeat them fast. The damage and devastation that can be inflicted by Islamic radicals has been proven over and over.
A lone protester opposing the idea of Fortress America was drowned out by shouts, but still made her message known before a TV audience of tens of millions. Whether you think Trump's protectionist and isolationist message is the answer,
our plan will put America first.
Or whether you think he is a fraud, Trump has triumphed because he claims to speak for the ignored and the voiceless.
I am your voice. And we will make America great again.
This was maverick, vintage, populist Trump at his best. But the question remains here. Are there still enough angry, frustrated and fearful voters to take him all the way to the White House?
We will find out the answer over the next 3 months. But he's certainly connected here.
He brings to the table conversations that people have at home, and he brings it to the forefront and says what's on everybody's mind.
He's trying to bring people in because he speaks to the average person.
The idea of a blue-collar billionaire may seem improbable, but in this age of terrorism, he is a man projecting himself, perhaps ominously, as America's savior. Robert Moore, News at 10, Cleveland.
Well, all this week we've been examining the impact of Donald Trump's presidential campaign in our series Divided States of America. His nomination speech was delivered right in the heart of a classic swing state, which has nearly picked every winner of the White House since the 1960s. And nowhere is more typical of Ohio than Wood County. There, Julie watched Donald Trump's speech with a group of voters who'll decide which way Ohio swings.
From Toledo's news leader.
We made it to Friday and another hot day.
Wood County, Ohio, where the political temperature is soaring and the toxic flavour of the campaign is seeping onto the sidewalks. A swing county in a swing state, this is middle-class middle America, where they've picked the president for more than 4 decades. So at Jed's Barbecue and Brew Bar in Perrysburg, how would Trump's speech go down? We spent the evening with some of its customers. Tyler Greeder, a Democrat and Bernie Sanders supporter.
This is the most divisive time in recent history. Half the Democratic Party doesn't like the Democratic Party and half the Republican Party doesn't like the Republican Party. Everything is up in the air right now. And
we must immediately suspend immigration.
First flare-up of the night, Trump on immigration and terrorism.
You can't fault an entire society or an entire group of people for the decisions of the minority, and that's exactly what he's doing with what he just said.
With an Iranian Muslim father, Haraz Ganbari, a Republican and military vet, struggles with some of Trump's values.
My dad's an immigrant to this country, and so you look around at her family, and maybe your families are immigrants.
But they all did it and went through the steps, became American citizens.
From Trump fan Dr. Susan Gross, big approval for his embrace of the LGBTQ community.
We need someone to say, that's not our issue, that's a personal issue. The government should be taking care of national security, the big stuff.
And then it was time for the wall. Susan's husband, Dr. Thomas Gross.
So America's a country that builds walls now, is it?
I have no problem with that. I have no absolute problem with protecting Americans. Do you?
God bless you and good night.
You're hired.
A rousing end to Trump's big speech, so what did they make of it? Especially Chris Blade, a first-time undecided voter.
Do you want him to be your voice?
I'm honestly not very sure at this point. I'm still very undecided. I'd like to see what Hillary has to say. I'm not a big supporter of her, but I'd still like to see what she has on her mind.
Yeah. So he's done, how would you say? Give him a mark out of 10.
He's done a 6 or 7 out of 10 for me.
He was really interesting to listen to. He was very humble.
honestly, I wish he would have given more solutions to things like we mentioned earlier. You know, he did tell us what he's going to do, but he didn't exactly tell us how he's going to do it.
Debates like this in Perrysburg and across this swing state show there is still everything to play for in a race which is dividing America. This time next week, it'll be Hillary Clinton's turn to set out her stall. Julie Etchingham, News at 10, Ohio.
45 more athletes have failed the doping retests being done on samples from past Olympics. 30 were from 2008 in Beijing and 15 from London 2012. The athletes are being informed, and any found to have broken the rules will be banned from competing in Rio. On Sunday, Olympic organisers are to decide whether to ban all Russian athletes from the Games after accusations of state-sponsored doping. It's emerged tonight that thousands more holidaymakers could be affected without yet knowing it by the collapse of the low-cost holiday travel firm. Tonight, the company's boss broke his silence exclusively to us, saying he and his staff have received threats. There was, however, no direct apology to his customers.
Low-cost holidays ceased trading, leaving customers facing lost cash and lost holidays. Now, in his first comment since the firm's failure, the boss has told us he's been so unfairly treated, he's called the police. He says, "I've had threats to me, my staff and property that's been unfair, inaccurate and unacceptable. I've asked the police to look at these."
My name is Paul Evans and I am the CEO of the Low Cost Travel Group.
He's been attacked because the firm took money with this massive sale right up to the day the company failed. Customers like these want answers, but only now has the company boss spoken out in emails sent to us.
There's so many questions, I just can't think. Where's our money? How has it been able to happen? What is he going to do to fix it?
It's their first wedding anniversary, but they've had to pay an extra £6,000 for a large family trip to celebrate. And one line from Low Cost Holidays boss made them livid. He says, "This is a devastating time for me, my family, the staff, their families, suppliers, travel agents and customers."
Nowhere in the email does he even say sorry. That should be the first thing he should really say. Is he going to sell his homes? What's he going to do so all the customers get their money back?
He cares about himself, he doesn't care about us.
Why go high cost when you can all go low cost?
We've learned that more customers are involved than first reported. It's because a sister company, Low Cost Beds, sold hotel accommodation wholesale to other travel agents. Tonight I met one. His customers are financially protected by the Atoll scheme and a bond, but he fears for others.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. I mean, when you think low-cost holidays itself online is obviously a huge component, but behind that, if independent travel agents can also access their network of low-cost beds as well, then it's massive.
Today, the Low Cost Holidays boss told us he's still working tirelessly to help, but customers are tired of all the stress. Chris Choi, News at 10.
Sam Allardyce was officially confirmed as the new England manager today. Big Sam, as he's known, has signed an initial 2-year deal after Roy Hodgson's resignation.
Excuse me, I can't stop smiling because I've got this job. This is a job I've waited for many, many years, and I'm absolutely delighted that I now sit in this privileged position of being the English national team manager. It's going to be a great thrill for me to take the team forward from the nation's point of view and hopefully make everybody so proud of the England team again.
A man who became the first patient in Britain to have a double hand transplant said today he's looking forward to being able to pick up a beer. Chris King, who was badly injured in an accident at work, says it's better than a lottery win because he feels whole again.
I didn't think they'd be this good at this stage. Really? Yeah, they're fantastic.
An incredible sense of relief for Chris King, who never thought he'd be able to touch and feel again.
It's better than any lottery win because you feel whole again. The hands were made to measure, they absolutely fit. And it's actually opened up a memory because I could never remember what my hands looked like.
And this is what his hands looked like 3 years ago, after an horrific accident on a metal pressing machine at work. The surgery at Leeds General Infirmary was complex and pioneering. The first double-hand transplant to be successfully carried out in the UK, and also the first time a hand has been transplanted above the wrist. But the surgeon who led the procedure says not everyone can handle the recovery process.
They will go through a very strong psychological screening to make sure they understand, they can cope with, they can manage and will comply with the regimen we set up.
Mark Carhill is proof the procedure does work. 4 years on from his hand transplant, also at Leeds Infirmary, he saved his wife's life when she had a heart attack last month. He gave her CPR until the paramedics arrived, something he could never have done with one hand. Both men were only able to have this life-changing operation because the families of the donors gave their permission after their death. There is no option to donate limbs on the NHS organ donation register.
For a family being asked to donate a hand at a very sensitive time, it's very difficult for them. But I would say to them, these hands are going to improve so many people's lives.
Chris hopes to shake Mark's hand in a few weeks. He has so many plans for when he gets home, but the first thing Chris wants to do is pour himself a pint of beer. Nazanin Mashiri, News at 10.
All right, let's go back to tonight's developing story now. The terror attack in Munich at a shopping centre. Our security editor, Rohit Katru, is still here. What are the latest developments?
Well, the authorities in Germany are now just confirming that 9 people have been killed so far. That's the death toll. And the 9th body was found almost a mile from the scene of the shooting. As many as 2, perhaps fewer, attackers who may still be on the run. We don't know who is responsible. There's so much focus on Islamist terrorism, but don't forget terrorism comes in many forms, and in fact it's worth reflecting on the fact that 5 years ago today Norway was mourning 77 victims of Anders Breivik, and tonight it's Germany that's mourning.
Rohit, thank you. So that is where we are tonight, a large area of southern Germany on full-scale terror alert. This is the scene in Munich right now. The city is in a state of emergency with transport stopped, people told to stay indoors and roads and motorways sealed off. It began with gunshots at a crowded shopping centre. There are said to be 9 people dead. One of those may be one of the attackers. A huge manhunt is underway, with other suspected attackers believed to be still on the run this evening. Our website will, of course, have the latest throughout the night. Tom is here on Monday. Whatever you're doing, have a peaceful weekend. Good night.